want to talk to you a little bit about social emotional learning. I think it's something that we hear a lot about right now. It's kind of a hot topic in schools, and coming out of a pandemic, it's become one of the things that's been in the forefront of people's minds, is not only how were our students affected academically in the last several years, but how have their social and emotional needs been impacted by what we have all collectively been through. So just to start, this is something that we do with kids. So trying to get a little bit past the, hey, what's your favorite color? What's your favorite food? We try to dig a little deeper and get to know each other a little better. So in the chat, if you're willing, if you would name something smaller than your arm that sparked joy for you this week, I would be curious to see your answer. And now I'm like scared to touch anything because I think I'm going to disappear. So Miranda, I cannot see the chat. Can you see it? Is there anything there that has sparked joy for anyone this week?
A cookie, baseball, yes. Cola, Musketeer, mini chocolate bars, a candle. I'm with the candles. It's my fall scents right now. Chips, and I'm with the food. A cup of coffee every morning. You guys are after my heart.
Perfect.
Tea, Reese's cup, and the greens growing around the garden.
Oh, I love that too. So this is something that would be an intro to an SEL activity that we might do with children of any age. And we kind of try to push them, like I said, a little past like the very, very obvious, but not immediately into something that feels too vulnerable. So we've done activities with staff and with kids where we say, okay, now think of something that's bigger than a car that you're grateful for, right? And we're just trying to like get a little bit of feedback from them about who they are as people, and also ask them to pause for a moment and think about what does matter to them. So social emotional learning is critical for the kind of citizens that we are trying to help raise in whatever role we have in children's lives. And there's 5 competencies that are part of this overarching social emotional learning. So just like when I was a reading teacher, I taught vocabulary and phonics and fluency and comprehension and phonemic awareness. And I had all kinds of activities and lessons that fell under those pieces of reading. Social emotional learning is the same way. We have all kinds of activities, all kinds of lessons, and all kinds of skills that fall under these 5 categories. So there's self-awareness, and we'll talk about each one a little bit more as we go. Self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. So I bet your wheels are already turning as you think about the children that are in your life in any capacity, and how all of these things are really critical for developing people that are happy and functioning and contributing to our society. So I have a video that'll just introduce for you what SEL is. So somebody give me a thumbs up if you can hear it.
There's a lot of talk these days about SEL, social emotional learning. But what exactly is it? Social emotional learning is the process of learning social and emotional skills, and it's just as important as learning reading or math. This learning process is most effective when it begins early and continues through high school. Social emotional skills are essential for success in school, work, and life. With SEL, students learn to manage their own emotions and behaviors, have empathy and show care and concern for others, solve problems effectively, make responsible decisions, and maintain healthy relationships. Students learn to recognize what's happening inside them and to be aware of their emotions, which helps them deal with strong emotions and impulsive behaviors. It helps them stop, take a breath, and think about a situation before acting. Students learn to identify others' emotions and perspectives, which helps them empathize and show compassion, no matter who they are or what their background is. It's not difficult to imagine how this is important in the classroom and in life. Students learn to solve problems in peaceful ways and communicate assertively about what they need or want. This helps them get along with other students and get the help they need from adults. When students learn to make responsible decisions about their lives and their future, things can turn out better. Research shows social-emotional learning makes a difference. Students who participate in SEL do better academically, have improved attitudes and behaviors, and act in delinquent or disruptive ways less often. In the United States, students with strong social-emotional competence are twice as likely to earn a college degree and nearly 50% more likely to graduate from high school and have a full-time job by age 25. Just as important, students who are socially and emotionally competent have more friends. This means they're more likely to feel connected to school and do well, and less likely to be left out or bullied. Simply put, by participating in social-emotional learning, students learn the skills to succeed in every facet of school and the rest of their lives.
So that's just a little intro about kind of the basics of what SEL is and why Fayette County Public Schools has really put some emphasis on this in the last many years and has really decided that these skills are equally as important to our students as the traditional academic skills that we would all expect to be taught. So I have a question for you. There's 8 questions here, and I wonder if in the chat, if you could give me a number. So as I go through them, kind of count on your finger. If someone comes to mind, it could be a child or an adult in your life, maybe try not to have all of them be your partner or your spouse, that struggles with these kinds of things. So do you know anyone who struggles to make decisions or makes poor decisions? Do you know anyone who has trouble compromising? Someone who doesn't work well in a group? Who struggles to manage their emotions? Who finds themselves in unhealthy relationships, seems completely unaware of the feelings and needs of other people, or appears unaware of how their own behavior and choices impacts others, or makes impulsive decisions that will cause problems later. So out of those 8, how many have you seen just with people in general in your life? Okay, so we have some 8s coming in and some 7s. I think that I can think of 8. Now, not the same person having all 8, but definitely these things pop up, and they are struggles for children and adults alike. And these are the kinds of skills that SEL instruction can help children develop. So there is a ton of research behind social and emotional learning and being taught explicitly in schools. And the research says that just like we can teach children how to read, and just like we can teach children the math skills that they'll need to progress, we can teach children social and emotional skills. We can help them with things that they haven't been exposed to yet, or that they get confused on, or things that are just more difficult for them. So we can build those skills, and it looks different in kindergarten than it does your senior year in high school, but those skills can happen from a very young age all the way up. And with the support of adults in their life who understand these things, they can improve. So many of you mentor children and have kids in your life in many different capacities. And so we start to think about what are some of the problems that kids are facing. So I was thinking about this over the weekend, and I could have probably come up with hundreds and hundreds of things to list, but some of the ones that came to mind that I see a lot in our schools are issues with bullying, with friendships, and maybe knowing who to trust. I think a lot of our kids struggle with like power dynamics in relationships, and how do they manage that, and how do they get help when they need it. Another thing that I see a lot in our schools, I think this has been true for all people for all time, but it seems especially pertinent with what we've gone through in the last couple of years, is the ability to manage emotion. So being able to manage things like frustration and anger and disappointment. and knowing when those things are sort of brewing inside of them, to be able to pay attention to those warning signs that their body is giving them. And then also knowing how to self-regulate and calm themselves when needed. And then another thing that I think that kids are facing a lot is knowing who they are, knowing why they matter and what's important to them. So I think that there's so much information coming at children from so many sources that do they have the ability to sort of come to their internal world and figure out, who am I and what matters to me? So when I think more broadly, what are some of the problems in our society right now? Okay, we could probably spend a few hours on this and we would all have many opinions. But one thing that comes to mind is, as a society, being able to disagree with each other respectfully. That seems to be something that there's a lot of talk of right now, is how do we as adults do this and how do we model it for young people? Working together towards a common goal. That seems to be something that there's lots of discussion about. Has that broken down in some ways? And are there ways that we can improve that? And then another thing is valuing all people, valuing what they bring to communities, to their places of employment, to their families. So if these are things that we know are these big, systemic, messy, complicated, intertwined issues for the children that we're working with, and also the society that we live in, is there a way that social emotional learning can help? Maybe not fully resolve every single thing, but is there a place for SEL to address some of these issues that we all know are present for kids? So I have another video for you, and it will make a case, and I hope it will convince you that yes, SEL is hugely important to our children, and this is why.
School should be where everyone feels comfortable and everyone should know that everyone's unique and you don't have to be perfect.
SEL is really about the holistic development of young people.
Social emotional learning to me provides students with purpose. SEL was a great foundation and catalyst for me. It taught me to value education and value human connection.
Social and emotional learning is the process by which children grow and develop their emotional lives and their relationships.
Well, social and emotional learning gives the space where people can actually look at students as more than just numbers on a standardized test. We give people the space to explore who they are as people, to look at their identity, to recognize how important relationships are, and what it means to be a successful human, not just a successful student.
In my classroom, they are able to share the things that are personal to them. They're able to celebrate one another's differences. They're inclusive of each other despite what race, socioeconomic, or gender they're from.
SEL promotes academic achievement in effective ways, raising test scores 11 percentile points. It reduces anxiety and distress as well. So it improves pro-social behavior and how kids get along and attend in the classroom.
SEL is rocket fuel. It is the thing that can actually accelerate the advancement of our society.
When I think about a healthy environment for my daughter, I'm looking at, are those teachers engaged? Are they showing her to be an empathetic person? When teachers are engaged and they have that engagement with the students are going to excel.
The educators, the families, the community members, and the students agree that this is important.
How do we make sure that kids don't just get a segment of their life where social and emotional learning is important, but they're getting that in all parts of their life?
Right now, we have an untapped pool of talent. And so the idea is to leverage SEL in order to help young people realize those talents and thereby help the broader society and, in fact, the world.
We really can create schools that inspire, that help students find their sense of self, that help students find their sense of purpose, to learn how to relate to one another, and to better prepare kids for wherever they choose to go in life.
Both SEL taught you to step up when you need to, but also step back when you had to. So you were creating space for yourself, but also making space for others.
Now we open a new chapter, and the new chapter is inviting educators, families, young people, scholars, policymakers, inviting the whole country into the dialogue about the kind of social and emotional development we want to promote for all of our children in the future.
School should.
So it kind of gives you an idea of what SEL looks like in a school building. This idea that it is these, and I like when she said it's about being a successful human and not just a successful student. So I've had people I've encountered in my life that are incredibly intelligent and highly skilled in some of the things that they are particularly gifted with. And they lacked some social and emotional skills that would allow them to sort of be able to transfer those gifts to other people, right? So there was like a disconnect. Like, you're so incredibly gifted in this way, but it's hard for you to connect with other people and to share, your wisdom and your gift. So SEL is this piece of helping children feel a sense of belonging in their school, a sense of self, to make sure that they have people that they can rely on and that they can go to, and that school is a safe place for them, where they are acknowledged for all that they bring to the table and not just how well they do in their academic subjects. So the first thing that we talk about in SEL is self-awareness. So these are the kinds of skills that come up when we do lessons focused on self-awareness. Understanding what my emotions are, understanding a little more about my internal world, understanding what I think and perhaps why I think that. So there's a lot of talk of growth mindset, of understanding that when kids have like these negative ideas about I can't, and they get really stuck in these thoughts, the idea of you can't do it yet is so incredibly important. If you're working with kids and you get stuck in the I can'ts, if you can stick a yet on the end of the sentence, you have just inserted hope into that negative thinking. Self-awareness is also understanding. I talk with kids a lot. Understanding our thoughts, understanding our feelings, and understanding our bodies. So, and when we talk about self-management, we'll talk a lot about understanding what my body is telling me and trusting that. So when we evaluate some of their thinking about themselves, about people around them, about the world, they can confirm that some of that thinking is absolutely correct. And then they may realize that maybe it's time to question some of that thinking. And again, that looks really different with a 6-year-old as opposed to a 16-year-old. But these are skills that we build long into adulthood. Understanding what an emotion is and how it physically manifests in my body. So emotions are just physical responses, really. We feel them in our bodies in different ways, and helping them identify, well, when your body does that, that's an emotion and it has a name. And how does it feel in your body? It might be different. Worried might be different in your body than it is in mine. Worried thoughts might be different in your mind than they are in mine. So knowing yourself is really important. So one of the ways we do this with children is we try to build their emotional vocabulary. So with little ones or with kids who don't have a ton of self-awareness skill, you'll get the three big emotions, I call them. It's like happy, sad, and mad. How, what's going on here? How are you feeling? Happy, sad, or mad? That's what we get. And that's okay, because that's really the base of most emotion and fear, I would say. So showing them things like emotion wheels, like the one here, you can Google like feeling wheels, emotion wheels, and you'll get all kinds of options for all different levels. But really trying to talk about giving them vocabulary and giving them words for what's happening to them right now is a really, really powerful thing that you can do. So when they tell you they're mad, absolutely they're mad. And when you've seen the situation and you hear more about what happened, you say, you know what? I think that you're mad. And also, when something doesn't go the way you hoped it would go, that's also called disappointed. So I have found real power in teaching the words frustrated, disappointed, and annoyed. So we're expanding this understanding of what they're feeling. And the reason for that is that if there is a word for it, that means someone has felt it before. And if someone has felt it before, then I am not alone. There is not something wrong with me. I am not defective in some way. I am experiencing an emotion that exists across humanity that has actually been named. So that's a really powerful piece of self-awareness, is understanding what emotions are happening and what they're called. The second piece of social emotional learning that we focus on in our curriculums is self-management. And this is hugely important for our kids. Okay, I know what these emotions are. I have some self-awareness, but now I've got to figure out what to do with them. So understanding that I have some control over the way I respond when I feel this. And when my body, I talk a lot about with kids, I don't talk about good emotions and bad emotions. I talk a lot about comfortable emotions and uncomfortable emotions. And if you can use that lingo with kids, it takes a lot of judgment out of what they're feeling, and they can identify with that. When I'm angry or when I'm scared or when I'm nervous, my body's pretty uncomfortable. My body's uncomfortable because it's trying to get my attention to protect me. It's a pretty natural response to what's happening. We know that sometimes emotions can build fairly slowly. So I can be a little bit worried about something, and then the more I think about it and the more I perseverate, I can become increasingly worried about it, increasingly nervous. Sometimes, particularly for our kids who have been through trauma, emotions happen like that. Trauma comes back as a reaction, not as a memory. So their body reacts instantly to protect them. So what we work with kids on is, okay, your body was doing a good job. Your body was trying to protect you. What we realize now is that you were not in danger. So what are ways when you're not in danger to calm that body back down, to get your brain back in a place where you can think and make decisions that you're in control of? So self-management is huge, huge, huge for our kids. And we spend a lot of time on it in our schools. The only part of their autonomic nervous system, right, like that fight or flight response that we can control. I can't look at a kid and say, your heart's beating really fast right now. I need you to slow that heart down. We don't have control over that. The only part of our body that we can control in those moments is our breath. And so we spend a lot of time teaching breathing. And we're teaching them that when they're calm and everything's fine, so that they then have that skill when they need it in a moment of fear, in a moment of anger. So we have one that I'll share with you that most of my kids like the most out of the many, many options we've given them. And if you want to share this with a kid or use it yourself, it's called the lazy 8 breath. So we just draw an 8 on its side, like an infinity symbol. And they put their finger in the middle, right where that star is. And as they go around one side, they breathe in. And as they come around the other side, they breathe out. And they just keep going. I always tell them it doesn't work until you do at least 5. 10 is best, right? And so there's something about that fluid motion that they like. We do it on paper first. They can get the hang of it, especially the little ones. But what happens then is they don't need to have anything with them to do this. They can do it on their legs sitting in class. They can do it in the palm of their hand. They can do it on the table in front of them. And kids really like that it's something they can do to help them manage uncomfortable feelings that nobody really notices. They can do it pretty discreetly. Another thing I teach kids is called 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It's a grounding technique. So when, especially for kids who have been triggered by some sort of traumatic response, their body and their mind sort of leave the here and now. And kids can become really dysregulated when they are responding to a past trauma or a past trigger. So what we need to do is bring the body and the mind back into this moment so that they can understand that that is not happening now, that happened before, and in this moment you are safe. So we look around the room and I ask for 5 things they can see, 4 things they can feel, 3 things they can hear, 2 things they can smell, and 1 feeling that they're noticing right now. This is great for anxious kids. I tell parents a lot when you're in the doctor's waiting room and they're getting increasingly nervous because they know they're going to have shots, do the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. There's so many instances when you can do 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 yourself. It helps on grown-ups too. It really does bring the brain and the brain and the body back to the here and now, and it really helps to start regulating that nervous system. The other picture there is something that we have in every single classroom in our school, and there's several schools in Fayette County that have these now. We call them peace corners. So we have a little place in every single classroom, and it's set up with like a breathing ball and an emotions chart and a calm down bottle and all these little things that they've been taught how to use. And children just ask for a moment in the peace corner. They go over, they sit on the sparkly pillows, and there's actually a sand timer in there that's a 2-minute timer. And the rule in our school is that if you're in the peace corner and you put out the timer, nobody can talk to you. Nobody can talk to you for 2 minutes, even the teacher. So they get a little bit of control over this time that they need. But also the teacher and the kid have agreed, I'm going to give you a couple minutes to self-manage and to self-regulate those uncomfortable emotions before I come over and start asking you to engage with me with your thinking brain. Because right now your feeling brain is online. So it's something to think about. A lot of parents that I've worked with have set up something similar in their home. My children each have one of these in their bedrooms at our house. It's not this elaborate, but they've got a few things that are helpful to them. And I think helping kids find a space that's protected. And if we have this space in our classroom, it means everybody needs things like this. This is not, you're not defective. There's not something wrong with you. You don't have to go to this place where like the bad kids go. No, this is something that we know we all have moments like that, and we all need a space where we can regulate our emotions. A third competency that we teach in social emotional learning is social awareness. So this is understanding. Now I've spent some time understanding myself. Now I'm going to look outward and understand how other people think and feel, how other people might respond to me and my actions, that they might have feelings about some of the things that I'm doing or saying, that other people have opinions that are different than mine, that other people have lived experience that is different than mine, and it's also valid. So understanding how we as a classroom or as a family or as an after-school group function as a unit, and that everybody is bringing things to our group, that's really important. So this is a huge piece in our curriculum of building community within our classrooms and within our school. So for older kids, this looks a lot like having circles where they each have the chance. There's an adult there to navigate the conversation and to sort of, be the moderator in a way, but the kids are there and are all given equal opportunity to answer the questions, to address the topic, to say how they're feeling and what their experience has been. For our little kids, we have morning meetings and they all sit in a circle and they do lots of like introducing themselves and saying each other's names and taking turns and letting everyone have their say and learning how to respond to people, like some really basic social interaction skills that are hugely important as we grow up and as they become grown-ups in our society. So then relationship skills maybe are a little deeper than that. These are the people that we are in relationship with. Figuring out who to choose for those relationships is important. Understanding, I do a lot of work with like 4th and 5th grade girls about understanding who are my acquaintances, who are my friends, and who are my best friends, and who do I tell my secrets to? Because if you tell all your acquaintances, that may lead to tragedy, right? So I spent a lot of time with that age group trying to figure out what these levels of relationship are. How do we work together? And then when there's damage in a relationship, which at some point is inevitable for most relationships, there's going to be hurt feelings, or there's going to be friction, or there's going to be misunderstanding. How do we resolve conflict? How do we learn to apologize? How do we take an apology? When do we say, I appreciate your apology, but I have to end this friendship? These are all like really complex and really difficult things for kids. So one thing that teachers use a lot is like they'll take a beach ball and they'll write questions and such on it that kids can use, like when they're doing a morning meeting or a closing circle at the end of the day. And that's a really great book that I have called How to Apologize. So these are all like critical things for having healthy relationships in their lives. And then the last competency that is taught is responsible decision making. So again, you can imagine that this is quite a spectrum when we're talking to first and second graders versus high schoolers. They're making really different decisions. But if we haven't started with our 5 and 6 and 7-year-olds talking about, you know, you're presented with so many decisions in your life. If we haven't built that foundation for them and we haven't helped them with the small decisions, then how do we expect them to have the skills they need to make really big, potentially life-altering decisions when they are teenagers? So I saw something the other day on like a parenting blog, and it said, if you don't listen to them when they talk about the small stuff, they won't talk to you about the big stuff, because to them, it was always the big stuff. And I think about that. My children are elementary age now, and the decisions that they're making, I know, right? As a 42-year-old adult with a lot of perspective, I know that this may not be like a lifelong, life-altering decision, but I still try to help them through the process, because for them right now, this is a big decision. And as they get older, hopefully, will they remember being guided through the process of making good decisions, so that when the decisions matter a lot and have a lot of weight behind them, they have some experience of how to do that. So I talk a lot with mentors and parents and people who help kids about giving some kind of structure to decision making. So these are just really, really simple things. There's like that, you might have seen that acronym about think, like before you say something, is it true? Is it helpful? The one on the left is not as cute or fancy, but I use it a lot with children. Is it safe? Is it fair? Is it good for others? And is it good for me? Like if I can just look at those 4 components, it's probably going to lead me to a pretty strong decision. In our school, we have 4 core values that we talk about a lot. We talk about kindness, courage, commitment to justice, and living with integrity. So we use those a lot when we're teaching responsible decision making. We say, well, let's come back to the core values of a Rosa Parks Trailblazer. If we make this decision, is that kind? Is that showing a commitment to justice, right? So you can do it in so many ways. You can set up frameworks for kids, but as long as they have a framework that they can come back to and kind of help them, like the steps of thinking it through, it really does help kids feel more confident. It's not just like well, I kind of wanted it, so I decided yes, right? I thought through these different aspects. So what does all of this SEL teaching look like in Fayette County schools? If you are working with kids that go to our schools, if they're in elementary school, they probably are being exposed to a curriculum called Caring School Communities. Now, a few of our schools chose other curriculums, but that's the one that most of our schools are using. And for our elementary kids, it looks like a morning meeting every single day with their classmates. The teacher follows the curriculum guide for what topic they're talking about that week. They have closing circles at the end of the day. And then they have something within that program called Cross-Age Buddies, which is a big hit at our school because it really creates a school community. So we pair older kids with younger kids, and they do activities and things together throughout the school year. In middle school, they're using a program called Second Step, and it is primarily like they'll see a video of a situation, and then there's a discussion of, you know, what if that was you, and have you had something similar like that? And all of those videos and all the morning meetings are aligned with the competencies that I shared with you. In high school, they do a program called School Connect, and it does give more opportunity, like I said, for the kids to come together and really share their perspective on the topics and the questions that are being asked that week. So that's the curriculum that's in place. But what I will tell you, if you have been in a school, if you have been a teacher, if you have loved a teacher, if you ever had a good teacher, it is also countless interactions and coachable moments and lessons during the day that our teachers take and say, let's talk this through. Okay, so the benefits of SEL have been researched and researched and researched, and the information that comes back is resounding. It leads to better academic outcomes. It is better for our society. It is a fantastic financial investment, and it improves lifelong outcomes. And you can now see why for children who are given this kind of instruction. We also know that teachers who are exposed to social emotional learning themselves are better teachers. They stay in the profession longer, and they are happier with their work. We know that kids who have SEL are more likely to graduate from high school. They're more likely to get a college degree, and they are more likely to get stable employment. And you will see why in a moment. All of the things that matter most to us as Fayette County Public Schools, as educators, as people who love children, are all impacted by teaching social and emotional skills to kids. It is all interwoven through all of these things that we talk about, that we wrestle with, that we try to figure out how we're going to help. So, as it said in the video, schools that implement SEL curriculum and are focused on teaching these competencies see an 11% increase in their test scores. That's big. That's the difference between failing and not. That's the difference between getting into college and not. 11 points is a lot. We also know it improves mental wellness for our kids. I have seen a significant difference in the children that come to me for counseling because they now are being exposed to these 5 competencies just as a part of their regular day, that we can talk at a higher level and they understand things at a deeper level. We also know that for every $1 we spend on SEL, we will get an $11 return on that investment. We also know that people who have these skills, because they are more employable and they are healthier and they are happier, are less likely to receive public assistance. One thing that gets said, I could spend another hour on this, is that it is a distraction from academics. I have been in the classroom and I will tell you what's distracting from academics is bullying, is friendship problems, is kids with mental health problems that aren't being addressed, is behavior problems, is kids who can't regulate their emotions and they're throwing things across the room. That is distracting when you're teaching. A 15-minute morning meeting where we build community and safety and belonging and understanding saves me a whole lot of time during the day, because I have got happy, healthy students in this room that want to be here, that feel safe and are ready to learn. So anyway, don't get me, I could go on about that one. Another misconception is that it's therapy. It is not. I'm an LCSW. I do therapy. I know what that is. These are like the basic building blocks. Some people would say this is, you know, what your parents teach you, what your grandparents teach you, what your church taught you, what your neighbors taught you. Absolutely. Maybe for some kids and maybe not. But we know that they're with us for 7 hours a day, and school is their community too. And so these things are important to be taught there. But no, it is not a substitute for therapy. That's an entirely different presentation. It is not, I have heard this and I was like, I'm sorry, what? That it's to promote a specific political agenda. It's not. It's helping kids understand themselves. It's helping kids understand each other. It's helping kids feel safer and like they can manage what's happening in their lives. I think that when this generation of kids is of voting age and can run for political office, we might be in better shape, actually. It might affect our political scene in a few years. That would be the hope. We also know that 92% of executives that were surveyed say that problem solving and communicating clearly are as important to them as the technical skills that they need from their employees. So we know that employers are paying attention to this, that they think it's important. It's kind of like I said earlier, you can come to work and be really good at this thing you do, but if you're a terrible employee and you can't work with your colleagues and you can't function with other people, then you're not a great employee and your skills aren't going to translate. We know that some of the big companies are now putting emphasis on this. It's what they're looking for, it's what they're training in, and it's what they are recruiting. So as mentors, as people who spend time with children, you can have a huge impact on their social emotional learning. You can reinforce the things that are being taught at school. You can have deeper and bigger conversations one-on-one with kids than maybe they're getting in a classroom of 25 or so. And if you understand kind of these 5 different areas that I talked about today, you'll know maybe where there's an area of growth for a kid that you care about. And maybe there's things you can do with that child and conversations you can have with them to strengthen those skills. There's a lot of resources available, the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence. And the second one, you'll hear people talk a lot about CASEL. CASEL is kind of like, that's where those videos came from that I showed you. They're kind of like the big dogs of SEL nationally. And if you go to CASEL's website, there is just an infinite amount of information and resources and ideas. You could spend all day there and not get through it all, but it's a great resource to come back to. So in summary, and my final flag is that SEL is critical for our kids, for their academic achievement, for their employability once they graduate, for their health, for their happiness, for the relationships that they have in our community. And it's important that we as adults work on our own SEL skills so that we can model it for kids, so that we can better care for kids, and that we can help teach them along the way. So that's all I have to say about SEL. I am a huge advocate for and very passionate about it, but I would love to know if you all have any questions or comments or just some thoughts on social emotional learning.
Yeah, let me say thank you to Katie so much for all of the just so many insights, so much just great information, so many wonderful things to think about for those of us who are in mentoring roles, those of us who are supporting and interacting with young people in any way. I think you've really just shared so many helpful things. So as Katie said, we would love to open up the next few minutes for questions and any other things that Katie can share about. I do want to point your attention to the chat box. Miranda has posted a link to a survey. If you would take a minute after our session is done to fill that out, that will help us as we continue to plan these sessions, these Be Well Wednesdays. That will be very helpful because we want to make these helpful to everyone who participates. So be sure to fill that out. But let's open up this time for questions. So feel free to unmute yourself and ask away or use the chat function.